In this React application, I am using TanStack query to fetch data from an API out in the internet called dummy.json. Despite its name, dummy.json is a real API serving non-proprietary data, meaning it's free for us to use. In this case, I am fetching from the products endpoint. I am fetching 12 products, as you can see here on line 15. And here are the 12 products from dummy.json API rendered in the browser. In the development environment, TanStack Query comes with its own development tool. As a review or an overview, TanStack Query maintains an in-memory cache that stores the results of API requests using unique query keys. In this case, I named the key products because we are fetching products, as you previously saw in the code, which allows components to instantly access previously fetched data without making redundant network calls. When multiple components request the same data, they all share the cache result, dramatically improving performance and the user experience. The cache intelligently manages data freshness through configurable stale time and cache time settings. Fresh data is served immediately, while stale data is still shown instantly but triggers a background refetch to keep the UI responsive. The TanStack query allows us to trigger any of these actions from the DevTools in the browser. TanStack query has the concept of the data stale time, which means that after a certain elapsed time, TanStack query will go out and refetch the data for us. In my case, on line 20, I've set the stale time to 5 minutes. If you do not manually set a stale time, then the default stale time will be 0 milliseconds. When the stale time has elapsed, TanStack query will refetch the data in the background when these events occur. The React component remounts, a window refocuses, a network reconnection happens, or a refetch interval is triggered if it is configured in the code. Of course, that occurs in the production environment. These actions in the DevTools are local. So, I have set the stage to talk about an interesting feature in TanStack query called Optimistic Updates, which is a feature of the library when you mutate the data, which is to say when you fire off a post, put, or delete API request, where the cache is immediately updated with predicted results, while the actual API call happens in the background, creating the illusion of instant interaction. Perhaps the word illusion is rather controversial, but nevertheless, we'll carry on. At the time of the recording of this video, TanStack Query is on its 5th version, but Optimistic Update has been around for several versions. TanStack Query provides us with the tool to accomplish optimistic updates, but they're rather vague as to when we should use it. So they are giving us agency for this tool. My game plan for this tutorial is to demonstrate what TanStack Query Optimistic Updates look like in a React application from the programmer perspective and from the end user's perspective. And then we're going to convert a pessimistic updates app to an optimistic update app. And per usual, I have created a GitHub repository for you with the entire code base for this video, for you to follow along if you like, or to reference at a later time. I've written the code in an expressive way with plenty of comments for teaching points, and I've tried to clearly explain the concepts of optimistic updates. I also created a before and after code file to show you the difference between a pessimistic update on a data mutation versus an optimistic update of the same file. I built the user interface in such a way that makes it easy for you to demonstrate the optimistic updates concept to your team or your company or your organization, just like I had to do 3 years ago. And as the TanStack suite of products become more and more popular, including Query, the concept of optimistic updates will be discussed regularly at corporations in North America and in the UK. This tutorial is about the concept of optimistic updates. If you want to learn everything there is to know about fetching data and the create, update, and delete functionality of TanStack Query with React, I have a separate video for that. It's completely free on YouTube. See, it's even Taylor Swift approved. Most of us already know what a pessimistic update is. If we write an application to post data to an endpoint, say the name of the product and a price, and we add it to the endpoint, we are either going to be successful, or if something fails, we're going to know about it right away. Such as the case here. The post was successful, we get a 201 back in the network tab. But let's say something goes wrong. For example, I'll add an X to this endpoint, and then I'll post to that wrong endpoint. Then I'll get an error, and the error is handled right away, and the user get feedback straight away. This is a pessimistic update. And of course, we get the appropriate HTTP error code. Some of you are wondering, what's wrong with this? Isn't this the same workflow we've been practicing for decades? And indeed, our end users are accustomed to this user interface. And from the programmer's perspective, we are leveraging the TanStack query library to make our CRUD HTTP request succinct and intuitive. Again, if you want a tutorial about the nitty-gritty of TanStack query, you can watch my Taylor Swift approved tutorial or the many wonderful tutorials available for free. And if you do have some familiarity with TanStack query, the way that I'm doing the data mutation here for the post request is pretty much spot on from the documentation itself, including classical error handling, and then we communicate with the user interface via the TSX. And this is indeed the pattern that we have come to know and love about TanStack query. So what's wrong with this? My answer would be absolutely nothing. If you're comfortable with this, if your bosses and your company and your clients are comfortable with this, I would say stick with it. Now, both the success and the error scenario for this post request went pretty quickly. But if you are anticipating latency, you can certainly add a skeleton to this to let your end users know what's going on. In case you're not familiar with the skeleton loading screen, this is it here. You've seen it used in apps like Netflix or Amazon Prime, in addition to apps in other industries. Now I will demonstrate optimistic updates in the UI. If you are following along with the code base, the component that you just saw in the UI is this file here, the at product optimistic comprehensive demo. In the app TSX file, you would comment out the other component and uncomment out the comprehensive demo one. I also created some instructions for you down here if you wish to follow. And then we've reduced the amount of products that we are fetching from 12 to just 2 so that we can better see the UI in action. We'll start with the normal success radio button. We will fill out our form, filling in the inputs, and then making a normal call. Nothing too exciting there, just procedural. Let's check the network tab. As you can see there, um, we're adding the items, and then we're getting 201 back. And of course, it's bringing back the list. If you're wondering how come we got a 201 down here for a successful create method call, but the list only shows 2 items, that is because of the API itself. This API, being a public free API, will not persist the image and the text that you create, even though it was a successful call, because for obvious reason, people might put like derogatory text uh, or obscene photographs here. So that's why they do not allow the persistence of text and photographs from the general public because of the obscenity rules. But if it was your own personal API, then when you add the product and then you fetch from the API, the product will render here in this list. Fortunately, though, we can slow down the network request, and using optimistic update, we can see a quick flicker of the temporary image that we applied. So here I am applying the slow network with a 6-second set timeout delay in the code. If you do not want to programmatically set the timeout, you can also go into the network tab and then set the throttling here to a slower network speed if you want. Now, in my case, I am applying an image, a random image that's free to use. Obviously, in your code base for your own organization, you would want to inject whatever image is appropriate for that optimistic update for that scenario. It could be a simple thumbs up, who knows, whatever icon is standardized for your company or your organization. Now, you might be wondering, isn't this essentially the same concept as having a skeleton? Conceptually, yes. But instead of showing the end users an empty set of skeletons, we will actually be showing them what the success scenario would look like ahead of time. That's why I used the word illusion earlier in the video. And in case you're not familiar with what a skeleton is, this is it right here. You've seen it used in the past 4 years or so in streaming apps like Amazon Prime or Netflix, and in other industry as well, like banks and financial institution. Returning to the philosophy that optimistic update can be construed as an illusion. Some people can legitimately argue that this creates false expectation about system performance, while others say that it's just simply good UX design that matches good mental models. The key, I think, is handling the quote unquote illusion breaking moments or the errors gracefully so users don't feel deceived. Now I will demo the server error scenario. The temporary image will flash here really quick. And if there was an issue with the server, then we will get the normal error message. So there's the error message. I don't know if you saw it, but the temporary image flashed like super quick. So in optimistic updates, or the illusions, quote unquote, works best when failures are rare, which is why optimistic updates are perfect for like high reliability operations, like adding products like I'm doing here. Uh, Adding products would be an internal admin type operation for an e-commerce type company, right? Or liking media posts in social media, or sending messages. I brought up the ethical issue because people are people, right? TanStack Query gives you a tool. They give you agency. How people use it is up to them. But certainly, I won't dive into this too deeply, but you can see how in the financial industry, in stock trading and commodities trading or crypto, how this can be misleading in the UI if the transaction doesn't go through. But like I say, people are people. Now, one thing I will remind you is that whether you use pessimistic updates or optimistic update, TanStack query does do refetching for you. If there was a network outage, uh, it will fire off refetching again for you. Your server, if you're a front-end developer, your back-end team has to set up the server in a fashion that will accept these refetches and won't break the back end. The next part of the video, I'm going to show you the before and after of the pessimistic update mutation and an optimistic update mutation. So you've seen the pessimistic update file already. We are using the same mutation patterns for create, put, update, and delete procedure just straight out of the box, straight out of the documentation for TanStack query. At a high level, the workflow for the pessimistic update is the user submits the form. We show the loading state, which appears very quickly. Loading state like is pending, for instance. We wait for the server response. If successful, invalidate queries to refresh the data so we get fresh data, and then update the UI with fresh data. For optimistic updates, the user submits the form. We immediately add the product to the UI. We are assuming success. We send the request to the server in the background. If the server fails, we roll back the optimistic update. Unlike on the pessimistic side, on the optimistic side, we have to create a snapshot of the previously good state in case we have to roll back to that previously good state if we were to encounter a problem with connecting to the server, or if the server itself is having a problem, or if we have a bad internet connection. And this is where we handle the optimistic updates itself by injecting a temporary image. Again, I am just using a random free to use image, but in actual code base, you would have to inject the proper image here. And then we add the optimistic product to our product list. Again, we didn't see that in the UI because I'm using a free public facing UI where they do not want profanity or anything obscene added to their list of products, so they don't allow that. But in your own private API, the optimistic product will show up on the product list. And if you're wondering why I'm using console.info instead of console.log, it's because in some CI/CD pipelines, they have it set up to where they don't allow console.logs in the linting. So, but they do allow console.info. So that's why I'm using console.info instead of console.log. And then ultimately, for our onMutate function, we are either going to return the previous products in case we have to roll back, something goes wrong, or we're going to return the optimistic product for the optimistic update. And then the rest of the code in optimistic updates is to handle errors, sync up with the server either on success or on failure. And then really the rest of the code is just general housekeeping. It does seem as if there are more code on the optimistic side, but really that's because I'm adding a lot of comment to make the code clear. It's only a few more methods than on the pessimistic side. And as you can see here, we're using the same hooks from TanStack for both approaches. Now, I sort of just glance over the before and after in these two files because I want to keep this video within a reasonable amount of time. but I did leave detailed comments in both files if you wish to dig a little bit deeper. Please consider subscribing to my channel. It is completely free. It doesn't cost you anything. I do not make any money from YouTube on these videos. I've been told that perhaps in the future YouTube might share some of the ad revenues with me. So therefore, I've been told to keep on asking viewers to subscribe to my channel. Again, it's free. So please consider subscribing to my channel. Please also consider giving this video a thumbs up if it was beneficial. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.